The property had stood alone for so long that even the wind seemed unsure how to move around it. Tall grass swallowed the front steps, and dust coated the windows like a second skin. People in the town passed it every day, yet no one ever slowed down. Some said the owner vanished years ago, others said the place brought trouble, but most simply forgot it existed. Time had erased its story, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions. A man and Roxana lived just a few streets away in a small rented home that creaked during winter and stayed warm in summer. Their life followed a quiet rhythm shaped by habit and patience. A man worked repairing old furniture and broken doors for neighbors who trusted his steady hands. Roxana spent her days stitching clothes near the window, humming softly as sunlight fell across the fabric. They never complained about what they lacked, choosing instead to value what they had built together over decades. One afternoon, a man noticed a faded notice tied loosely to a wooden post near the abandoned property. The paper flapped gently, worn by rain and sun. It spoke of official clearance and deadlines, written in cold formal words. A man stood there longer than he planned, reading the lines again and again. Something about the notice stirred a quiet pull inside him, not excitement but a sense of unfinished business that refused to be ignored. When a man returned home, he placed the notice carefully on the table as if it were fragile. Roxana read it slowly, her eyes moving with care over every line. She did not react with sudden hope or fear. Instead, she folded the paper neatly and set it aside. She knew a man well enough to understand that he would not bring something like this home without reason. Their conversations were often quiet, filled with pauses that carried meaning. That evening, a man spoke about the property in a calm voice. He said it might be wise to see the place before officials cleared it. Not to claim it, not to expect anything, but simply to understand why it had been left behind. Roxana listened and nodded gently. She trusted his instincts, shaped by years of careful choices and simple honesty. Together, they decided to visit the property the next morning. The next day arrived with a pale sky and cool air. A man and Roxana walked slowly toward the abandoned house, their steps unhurried. As they approached, the structure appeared older than a man remembered, its walls marked by cracks and stains of time. The front door hung slightly open, as if the house itself had grown tired of waiting. The silence around it felt thick, yet not threatening, more like a long-held breath. Inside, dust floated in the air, catching light from broken windows. Old furniture stood frozen in place, chairs pushed against walls and tables covered with cloth that had faded beyond recognition. Roxana ran her fingers lightly across a shelf, leaving a clean line in the dust. She felt a strange mix of sadness and respect, as though stepping into someone else's unfinished life. A man moved slowly, careful not to disturb anything more than necessary. They explored room by room, noticing small details that hinted at the past. A calendar still hung on one wall, its pages stopped at a date many years ago. A pair of worn shoes rested near the back door, untouched by time. The house felt abandoned, yet not empty. It carried memories that had never been properly closed. A man felt a quiet responsibility settle over him, though he could not explain why. In the back room, Roxana noticed something unusual about the floor. One wooden plank looked newer, less worn than the rest. She pointed it out without speaking, and a man knelt down beside it. He tapped gently with his knuckles and heard a hollow sound that did not match the rest of the floor. The sound echoed softly, sending a small shiver through the room. They exchanged a glance filled with curiosity rather than fear. A man carefully lifted the plank, revealing a metal surface beneath, cold and solid. It was covered in grime and hidden well, as if someone had gone to great lengths to keep it unseen. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The air felt heavier, and a man gently placed the plank back where it belonged. He said it would be better to return another day, prepared and thoughtful rather than rushed by surprise. Roxana agreed without hesitation. As they left the house, a man locked the door as best he could, though the lock was old and weak. The walk home felt different from before. The road seemed quieter, the sky wider. Neither of them spoke much, yet their thoughts were busy. Roxana wondered about the people who once lived there and why they had hidden something so carefully. A man thought about responsibility and how some stories wait patiently for the right moment to surface. That night, a man and Roxana sat together in silence, listening to the distant sounds of the town settling down. The folded notice lay on the table between them. They did not speak of wealth or hope. Instead, they spoke about caution, honesty, and doing what felt right. Sleep came slowly, filled with images of old rooms and hidden floors. Unknown to them, the quiet decision to return would soon change their lives in ways neither had imagined. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the world itself wanted to observe what a man and Roxana would do next. They woke early, sharing tea without many words. The thought of the hidden metal surface beneath the floor stayed with them through every sip. It was not excitement that filled the room, but a careful curiosity mixed with caution. Both understood that whatever lay hidden was not meant to be found easily. A man gathered simple tools he used for furniture repair, nothing unusual or forceful. Roxana packed food and water, treating the visit as a long thoughtful walk rather than an adventure. They believed that patience was better than haste. When they stepped outside, the town was already awake, yet no one noticed where they were heading. The abandoned property still lived on the edge of people's attention. When they reached the house, sunlight fell softly on its walls. The silence felt familiar now, less heavy than before. A man unlocked the door again and stepped inside, moving with respect. Roxana followed closely, her eyes scanning the room with calm focus. Dust still hung in the air, but the space no longer felt distant. It felt like a place waiting for honesty. They went straight to the back room. A man removed the plank slowly and placed it aside. Beneath it lay the metal surface they had seen before, shaped like a sealed door. It was not large, but it was solid and clearly designed to stay hidden. A man wiped away years of dirt, revealing a handle and faint markings that time had almost erased. Roxana watched quietly, her heart steady but alert. A man paused before opening it. He reminded himself that whatever they found might carry responsibility, not reward. With a deep breath, he pulled the handle. The metal door opened slowly, releasing cool air from below. A narrow staircase led down into darkness. The steps were sturdy, untouched by decay. This was not a random hiding place. It had been built with care and purpose. They descended carefully, step by step. At the bottom, they found a small underground room lit by weak light from above. Metal shelves lined the walls, and strong containers sat neatly arranged. Everything was clean, protected from moisture and time. A man felt a strange respect for whoever had built this space. It was not chaos or secrecy born of fear, but planning shaped by discipline. Roxana opened one container slowly. Inside were neatly stacked documents, bound and labeled. Another container held sealed packages, each marked with numbers and dates. A man opened one carefully and froze. Inside were stacks of currency, perfectly preserved. He closed the container again, his hands steady despite the weight of the moment. He counted quickly in his mind, then stopped. Numbers did not matter yet. They stood in silence, understanding that this was far beyond anything they had imagined. A man estimated the total carefully, checking documents and seals. The amount reached a figure that felt unreal, nearly $290 million. It was wealth hidden not by accident, but by deliberate choice. Roxana sat down slowly, absorbing the reality without panic. She reminded a man that wealth did not change truth. They reviewed the documents together. The papers showed the name of a businessman who once owned large shipping operations. Years ago, he disappeared during a financial investigation, leaving behind confusion and unanswered questions. The document suggested that this money was set aside legally, held in reserve during unstable times. There was no clear heir listed, no claim made after his disappearance. The money had been waiting, untouched and unclaimed. A man felt the weight of decision settle heavily on his shoulders. He knew this was not something to hide or rush. Roxana agreed. They discussed what honesty meant in this moment. The money was real, but so was responsibility. They decided to document everything carefully and contact authorities to report their discovery. It was not fear that guided them, but a belief that truth protected more than secrecy ever could. Before leaving, they sealed everything exactly as they found it. A man locked the metal door and replaced the plank, leaving no sign of disturbance. As they walked back into the sunlight, the house felt lighter, as if it had finally shared its burden. The town looked the same, unaware of what had been uncovered beneath its forgotten property. Word spread slowly after they reported the discovery. Officials arrived, surprised by the condition and scale of what was found. Investigations confirmed the documents were valid and the funds were legally stored. With no heirs and no claims for decades, the law recognized the finders. Aman and Ruxana were called back for formal procedures, their simple clothes standing out among official offices and serious faces. Throughout the process, they remained calm and respectful. They answered questions honestly, never exaggerating or demanding special treatment. People began to speak about them with admiration, not because of the money, but because of how they handled its discovery. The story spread beyond the town, reaching news channels and distant cities. Still, Aman and Ruxana returned home each night, unchanged in their routines. When the final confirmation arrived, Aman held the document quietly. The amount was real, the future suddenly wide open. Ruxana looked at him and smiled gently. She reminded him that wealth could build comfort, but values built peace. Together, they agreed that this discovery was not an ending, but the beginning of a responsibility far greater than either of them had ever known. Life did not change overnight for Aman and Ruxana, even after the confirmation became official. The town woke up the same way each morning, with shop shutters rising and distant sounds of traffic. Aman still brewed tea at dawn, and Ruxana still folded clothes neatly before starting her day. The only difference was a quiet awareness that their choices now carried greater weight. They understood that money could move faster than wisdom if not guided carefully. Officials visited their homes several times to complete formal steps. Papers were signed, questions were asked, and explanations were given patiently. Aman answered everything honestly, never trying to appear more important than he was. Ruxana sat beside him, listening closely and correcting small details when needed. Their calm behavior surprised many people who expected excitement or pride. Instead, they saw two ordinary people treating an extraordinary situation with respect. As news spread, neighbors began to look at them differently. Some offered congratulations with genuine smiles, while others watched from a distance with curiosity. Aman greeted everyone the same way he always had, with kindness and steady words. Ruxana continued stitching clothes for those who asked, refusing payment more often than before. They did not want the money to change how they treated others. To them, dignity mattered more than display. Aman spent long evenings thinking about the future. He sat quietly, reviewing the documents again and again, not out of doubt but out of responsibility. The amount was enough to transform many lives, not just theirs. Ruxana joined him during these moments, offering thoughtful suggestions rather than commands. She reminded him that their strength had always come from balance and patience, not sudden decisions. They decided to seek advice from people they trusted rather than strangers drawn by wealth. A retired teacher helped them understand long-term planning. A legal advisor explained how to protect themselves from unnecessary trouble. Aman listened carefully, asking questions with humility. He did not want shortcuts or quick rewards. He wanted a path that felt honest and stable. Meanwhile, the abandoned property remained under observation. Officials inspected it thoroughly, documenting every detail. The house was no longer forgotten, yet its quiet dignity remained. Aman felt a strange attachment to it, not because of what it held, but because it had taught him the value of patience. Ruxana said the house had waited for the right people, not the richest ones. Her words stayed with him. They began discussing how to use the money wisely. Aman suggested improving basic services in the town, starting with small changes rather than grand projects. Ruxana spoke about helping families who struggled silently, just as they once had. They agreed that help should never embarrass those who received it. Quiet support felt more respectful than public gestures. Aman visited the workshop where he had worked for years. The tools were old, the walls worn, yet the place felt familiar and honest. He spoke to the owner about improving working conditions and supporting skilled workers. The idea was welcomed with surprise and gratitude. Aman did not announce his new status. He simply acted as someone who wanted to give back. Ruxana began organizing her thoughts around education. She remembered young girls who had stopped coming to her for stitching lessons because they could not afford materials. She quietly arranged resources through trusted channels, ensuring no one felt exposed. The joy she felt did not come from being thanked, but from seeing confidence return to familiar faces. Despite their careful planning, pressure slowly grew around them. Distant relatives they barely remembered began calling. Some offered advice, others hinted at needs. A man handled these moments with politeness but firm boundaries. Ruxana supported him, reminding him that generosity without clarity often led to regret. Together, they learned to say no without guilt. The media interest increased as well. Reporters wanted interviews, stories, and photographs. A man declined most requests, explaining that their discovery did not make them special, only responsible. One journalist asked why they did not celebrate publicly. A man replied that true change happened quietly, without noise. That simple answer traveled far, earning respect rather than attention. At home, their evenings remained peaceful. They ate simple meals, shared stories, and reflected on their choices. A man noticed that the money had not filled the house with noise or chaos. Instead, it had deepened their conversations and sharpened their sense of purpose. Ruxana said that wealth revealed character rather than creating it. A man believed she was right. One day, they received a letter from a distant city. It was from an employee who had once worked for the businessman connected to the hidden funds. The letter thanked them for handling the discovery with honesty. It explained that many lives had been affected by the disappearance years ago, and their actions had brought quiet closure. A man read the letter slowly, feeling a sense of calm satisfaction. As months passed, the town began to change subtly. Roads were repaired, work opportunities grew, and people felt supported without feeling observed. A man and Ruxana never took credit publicly. They preferred to watch progress from a distance, knowing their purpose was not recognition but impact. One evening, a man stood near the abandoned property again. The grass had been trimmed, and the walls repaired slightly. The house no longer felt forgotten. Ruxana joined him, resting her hand gently on his arm. She said the house had given them more than money. It had given them direction. A man nodded quietly, understanding that the greatest part of their discovery was not what lay beneath the floor, but what it awakened within them. Time continued to move forward, steady and patient, just like a man and Ruxana themselves. Nearly a year had passed since the day they first stepped into the forgotten house, yet the memory remained clear in their minds. Their lives had expanded in responsibility, not in noise. They still lived in the same home, walked the same streets, and greeted the same neighbors. What changed was not their routine, but the quiet strength behind every choice they made. The projects they supported began to show lasting results. Small workshops turned into steady workplaces. Young people found training instead of leaving the town in search of uncertain futures. Families felt relief without knowing exactly where help came from. A man believed that dignity mattered more than recognition. Ruxana agreed, saying that real support should feel like hope, not charity. One afternoon, a man received a request from local officials. They wanted his guidance on restoring the abandoned property into something useful for the community. The house that once stood forgotten now carried meaning. A man visited the site again, walking through each room slowly. The dust was gone, the walls repaired, and sunlight filled the space. It no longer felt like a place of secrets, but of possibilities. Ruxana suggested turning the house into a learning center where skills could be shared freely. Sewing rooms, repair workshops, reading spaces, and quiet corners for guidance could exist under one roof. The idea felt right. A man agreed, knowing the house had waited long enough to serve a purpose greater than silence. Renovation began carefully, preserving the structure while giving it new life. Workers from the town were hired first, creating pride and ownership. A man visited often, offering guidance but never commands. He listened more than he spoke. Ruxana focused on organizing resources, ensuring every space felt welcoming and respectful. As the center neared completion, the town gathered quietly on opening day. There were no banners or speeches. A man simply unlocked the door and stepped aside. People entered slowly, curiosity turning into smiles. Children explored shelves filled with books. Adults examined tools and equipment meant for learning and growth. The house that once held hidden wealth now held shared opportunity. A man watched from a distance, feeling a calm sense of fulfillment. Ruxana stood beside him, her eyes reflecting quiet pride. She reminded him that this was not an ending, but a beginning shaped by trust. A man nodded, knowing the journey had changed them both in lasting ways. Over time, the center became a place of connection. Skills were taught, ideas exchanged, and confidence rebuilt. People from nearby towns came to learn, not knowing the full story behind the place. Aman preferred it that way. The focus stayed on progress, not past mystery. One evening, Aman and Ruxana sat together in the center after everyone had left. The rooms were quiet, filled with soft light. Aman spoke about how close they had come to walking away that first day. Ruxana smiled and said patience had guided them exactly where they needed to be. They reflected on how wealth had tested them, not through temptation, but through responsibility. Aman believed that money did not change who they were, but revealed what they valued most. Ruxana agreed, adding that trust in simple principles had protected them from fear and confusion. As years passed, their story slowly faded from public memory, replaced by the steady impact of their choices. Aman returned to teaching repair skills, sharing knowledge freely. Ruxana continued guiding others with calm wisdom. Their names were spoken with respect, not because of fortune, but because of consistency. On a quiet afternoon, Aman returned once more to the spot where the hidden floor had been. The metal door was sealed permanently now, no longer needed. He placed his hand on the surface gently, feeling gratitude rather than awe. The greatest treasure had already been found, and it was never meant to be stored away. Ruxana joined him, and together they walked back into the sunlight. The house stood strong behind them, no longer abandoned, no longer silent. It carried laughter, learning, and hope. As they walked home, Aman felt peace settle comfortably in his heart. Their journey had begun with curiosity, passed through responsibility, and ended in purpose. The property that no one claimed had finally found its owners, not through legal rights alone, but through care and intention. Aman and Ruxana never sought greatness, yet they achieved something far more lasting. They proved that when patience meets honesty, even forgotten places can change the future of many lives.